More rumors surrounding the San Francisco 49ers, what they're going to do in the NFL draft, what they might do in trade before the NFL draft. We're putting it all together in this mock draft. So stay tuned right now to Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers out there. Thanks for stopping by. If you're here with us on this live episode Sunday evening, you're probably already subscribed. If you're not, you got to be subscribed now, right now. So pause and do that. Just hit the thumbs up, though. Let us know you stopped by. If you're new to the program, welcome. Hang out with us every day as we talk San Francisco 49ers, getting ready for the draft, and then from there, getting ready for the regular season, and hopefully another Super Bowl run in 2025. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, Croc.
Wait, Peacock, before we get started, I definitely have to shout out something. I went to a coaching clinic out in Sacramento at Sac State. Shout out to Brandon Aiyuk and all those guys. They did a great job. But I was recognized more for being a host on Locked On 49ers than I was for actually being a high school football head coach. So shout out to all the listeners. Then I went to the casino after Sky River on the way home.
That's where you're going to find the Locked On listener faithful right there. The Locked On Podcast Network folks are going to be there for sure.
Oh man, one of the guys, that stands behind the women, make sure, or the dealer to make sure they're doing everything right. Oh, Eric Crocker. Yeah, listen to the podcast. Then the guy from another table, he sees me getting excited, came up a little bit of money, and he was like, "Oh, Croc." And I'm thinking he knows me from somewhere. Then later he comes up and is like, "Man, I listened to the podcast." So shout out to all the Locked On 49er listeners out there. And we definitely appreciate the love.
Absolutely. Love that. Did you see the bracket this year? Not the college basketball bracket, but the 49ers media bracket that Rob over there at Gold Standard puts out. He does it every year. Eric Crocker was the inaugural winner of the 49ers media bracket right here, the OG champion I've got as my co-host. But finally, Croc, he doesn't have us pitted off at the beginning of the tourney. We're in opposite sides of the bracket. So who knows? Maybe a final, maybe a Peacock finals in this thing. I don't know. I think I
didn't win it last year. I won it the first year. Yeah. Last year, Brad Graham beat me in the championship. Shout out to Brad Graham. He does an amazing job. I don't know anybody that works as hard as him on 49er stuff. Like, to put out the amount of content that he puts out daily, hourly, minutely, if that's a word. He's on it.
And that's who I'm facing this week, by the way, this round 2 is I got Brad Graham. So it's going to be a tough pull for me to get there, Croc, again this year.
We have more than enough listeners. You guys got to find this voting on Twitter. And man, you guys got to vote for our guy Peacock. If our listeners vote, you'll have more than enough.
The only person who's ever put me out in the bracket is Crocker. So I'm confident, but I'm not confident if I see you in the finals. That's the problem. But look, more than that, that's all fun. And like, don't, if you want to vote for Peacock, that's cool. But the thing that's crazy about it is the 49ers are probably the most well-covered team in the NFL. The fact that there's enough people to fill out that many like good content creators, beat writers, every which way you can cover the team. Like, other teams don't have that. So 49ers fans pretty lucky. In some ways, maybe they find that they don't like a certain way that the team is covered by one individual. There's somebody that's completely different that covers it another way. And so it's pretty amazing how many different folks cover the 49ers so darn well. So that's kind of the cool thing about the whole bracket. Just see that many names out there. It's like wild. Other teams legitimately cannot do that. Unique team we cover here in the San Francisco 49ers, Croc. Let's get into this with the 49ers. Latest news. Last week, there was a rumor from Bedard, who covers the team locally, or covers the New England Patriots locally, said that the New England Patriots are big on Brandon Aiyuk, and there might be a deal done there. And then now we have the we have the Cleveland Browns getting in the rumor mill here as it pertains to the San Francisco 49ers in a trade with Brandon Aiyuk. And it is Frischella, who is I don't know who he even writes for, but I've seen him out there with the rumors. And look, I don't know how strong each individual rumor monger is out there. This isn't a Schefter report. This isn't a Rappaport report. This isn't Tom Pelissero, but John Frischella looks like he does some work lately with Bleacher Report, Razzball, and so forth. Says the Cleveland Browns have been pounding the 49ers in the past week or so, trying to find a deal that works for Brandon Aiyuk. Looks like they want a wide receiver one, not only just a wide receiver one, but a wide receiver one for Shedeur Sanders. And this is one of the most fascinating NFL draft rumors of late, Croc. And if we have time, I want to try to get through this. And it's not so much about the exact names that are out there for the 49ers, but I just want to kind of start putting some of the rumors together. Some of the Tony Pauline's another draft guy has been doing it for a long time. And he's saying there's a couple names for the 49ers, and I threw him and those guys in my mock draft as well. And so I just want to kind of put the rumors together and see what that might look like for the 49ers on today's show. And maybe the top 10 of the NFL draft, or at least the beginning of the NFL draft. And so one of the biggest rumors that's going on in the NFL right now is Shedeur Sanders to the Browns, and that Cam Ward is getting closer and closer to being locked into the number one pick, whether it's the Tennessee Titans or the New York Giants trying to move up there. And then you get the Cleveland Browns and Shedeur Sanders. And the connection there is that apparently the Sanders family, Shedeur, Dion, whoever is pulling the strings there, likes the Browns. And I would think the Browns would be one of those teams where you're like, don't draft my son. You know what I mean? But apparently that's one of the teams they like. And so, and the curious part is, look, and it depends on how cynical of a human being you are, Croc, because the Myles Garrett thing happened in Cleveland, right? And Myles Garrett's like, man, it's not about the money. I want to win. We need a good quarterback. And apparently Myles Garrett has re-signed, and now $40 million a year can help that, right? But the Cleveland Browns organization sold Myles Garrett, Croc, on some sort of a situation at quarterback. And it's definitely not Deshaun Watson, and it's not Kenny Pickett. What could that possibly be sitting at number 2 in the NFL draft other than Shedeur Sanders? So I think there's a little bit of smoke to this fire potentially with Shedeur Sanders going number 2.
I feel like if I'm Myles Garrett and you're going to convince me with money, and I'm saying it's not about the money, it's about, hey, I want to win. I don't know if drafting Shedeur Sanders at 2 or 3 overall, wherever they're picking, is the path I would personally take. I think I would try to go more of a veteran route as opposed to not saying a rebuilding route, but clearly you're trying to figure out a way to get better at the quarterback position, and you want to do it right now. Like to convince Myles Garrett to sign an extension of that magnitude, maybe the money made it easy, but I'd assume, like, hey, if I want to win, bringing in a rookie quarterback isn't going to have us winning next year, unless you strike gold like you did with Jaden Daniels. But how many teams can bank on that? What Jaden Daniels did is a very unique and really special season that he had as a rookie. Do you see Shedeur Sanders, who I do not think Shedeur is as talented? I don't think Cam Ward or Shedeur are as talented as the previous 2 quarterbacks with Caleb Williams. I know for, what as much talent as he has, didn't go well his rookie year. A lot of ups and downs, more downs than ups. But even Jaden Daniels, like, they were just more talented than the first 2 quarterbacks that are likely be taken off the board in this class. Maybe if you look at the Denver Broncos situation, you say, well, you don't have to be as talented as Caleb or Jaden Daniels, but if you have a very competent quarterback, then you can have some success as well. And we saw that with Bo Nix, who is a veteran, and maybe they look at Shedeur from that sense, like, hey, this guy's battle tested. He's going to situations. This is the whole Bill Parcells thing. He has gone to situations that maybe weren't as ideal as a quarterback, going to Jackson State. I don't think that was the greatest place to go, but he went, turned them into a winner. And then he goes to Colorado. First year, very rocky. Started off hot, got rocky. Next year, you turned into a winning team, a winning program. And he did it having to throw the ball, and he did it not having a great offensive line. So, maybe I have to kind of change my view on Shedeur and say, hey, this guy is someone, if there is someone that can weather going to a situation that isn't the best, maybe it is Shedeur. I just talked myself into that over the last 2 minutes.
So, but here's the thing. What else? What? So you're Myles Garrett, Croc. What? And I'm Andrew Berry, the GM of the Browns. What is better than a QB at number 2 that has a famous last name? Like, what would get you more excited than that? Like, what else could it be? Except unless it's just straight up the money. And Myles Garrett was angling for that all along, right? And maybe that's the case. And look, I'm cynical enough. Myles Garrett, it felt like it's a little different, though. I don't know why with him. It just felt like, there might have been something to that. Like, what did you sell him on other than, hey, we're going to trade for Brandon Aiyuk and we're going to draft Shedeur Sanders number 2. There we go. Offense fixed. Let's go. Go get us 12 sacks.
I'd go veteran quarterback, and I would be calling Aaron Rodgers to
Aaron Rodgers. Is Aaron Rodgers with that? You think that's maybe the plan then? It could be.
And then I would take either a trade down and try to draft another defensive lineman to pair with Myles Garrett, but I'd figure out a way. It's like, hey, we're able to get Brandon Aiyuk for a 5th round pick, whatever the hell he's worth right now. We drafted a top tier defensive lineman to pair with you, Myles Garrett. 2nd round, we turned around, got another defensive guy. So now there's a receiver, albeit coming off of injury. Got Jerry Jeudy had a terrific year. So like there's some weapons there, little running backs and stuff. I could see a path to where a team that maybe had a down year trying to work through the Deshaun Watson stuff, but they haven't been terrible. So maybe they're like, well, they don't have as much. They just need a little bit of something to get Myles Garrett excited for him to want to sign. And maybe a plan like that could get him excited. But I don't know. It has to be Shedeur Sanders.
All right, let's start putting some of these rumors together and see what the NFL draft might look like for the San Francisco 49ers next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Monarch Money. If you ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all that money go? Between dining out, online shopping, coffee every morning, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. There are, how about this and look, Croc, you're married. I'm married. It seems to be pretty easy in our lives as far as that stuff goes with your wife and managing money. And, but for some folks with their partner, maybe there could be a smoother way to do it. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever with Monarch Money because you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. This episode also brought to you by FanDuel, and March Madness is here. FanDuel giving you the chance to get in on it like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. If you got your eye on a few underdogs this year, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props. That 12 versus 5, it happened again, right? FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly and no waiting around. And by the way, beyond March Madness, Major League Baseball season get going, in NFL, in NBA and NHL seasons getting real, and plus NFL draft props, all at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That is FanDuel.com. So here we go. Croc. I think we know who the 2 non-quarterback blue chippers are in this draft, and that is Abdul Carter, edge rusher from Penn State, and that is the corner / wide receiver, probably depending on what team he goes to, Travis Hunter out of Colorado. You got Cam Ward, who we just talked about, and then the wild card is Shedeur Sanders. Where does Shedeur Sanders go? He probably goes in the top 10 somewhere. Does he go number 2? Is he sitting there at 11 and a team wants to trade up with the 49ers and maybe do some work, right? But you feel like Shedeur Sanders is probably going to have some sort of a say in this whole thing and be a factor wherever that is at 2 or otherwise. Maybe pick 3 to the Giants who need a quarterback. There's a lot of teams that can use a quarterback at the top of the draft. So top 6, 7 picks, if he's still there, does the team want to trade up? So he'll be a factor there. So that's 4 guys. And then I know Mason Graham is a guy that you and I both like, Croc, that we've talked about. There is Armand Membo, who's really kind of put himself out there as one of the top players in this draft. If there's no Shedeur Sanders in the top 3 picks, it's probably Cam Ward. Then either, depending on which direction do the Browns go with Hunter because they got their guy back in Myles Garrett, so they don't do the edge rusher, or do they just double up and get a younger, faster guy on the other side of Myles Garrett, and then Hunter goes 3? Is it one of those situations? And then probably I'm putting Membo at 4 to the New England Patriots. But if it's Travis Hunter, maybe he plays wide receiver, so maybe the Patriots wouldn't in that case want to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. But I feel like a Brandon Aiyuk trade. I'm going through a lot of this, Croc. I'm sorry. But a Brandon Aiyuk trade probably has to happen before April 1st when that bonus hits, that roster bonus. I think that's the 49ers are trying to get out from under cash more so than they're going to get out from under Brandon Aiyuk, the player. But what's his value? I don't know. I'd put it at a 3rd round pick right now. And it's funny, and it could be less. I think the 49ers would probably like more. And let's face it, Croc, right? Like the 49ers are taking a big L on the Brandon Aiyuk thing. It's a mismanagement situation if they're trading him after just signing him. And for sure, even if you decided to get rid of him and you don't want him around anymore, it's addition by subtraction, something you should have already done because you're instead of a 2nd and a 5th, you're getting a 3rd maybe at best. Are you getting less than a 3rd? I don't know. I put a mock draft out there this weekend on Twitter, and it was fascinating, the responses. And I want to get into that mock draft in a second. I'm going to put it out here and talk about it a little bit deeper on the podcast, Croc. But it was amazing. I think I did something right because there was equal number of people who were super mad about it and thought it was terrible. Then on the other side, there was the same amount of people that thought it was awesome and a dream draft for the 49ers. And I think that's where we're at right now. I think it's going to be one of the wildest drafts in recent memory this year.
It definitely is for the 49ers, and the 49ers are at, I don't want to say a crossroads, because when you look at the roster, and we talked about it, just don't worry about any added context or anything like that. Just what the roster looks like. It looks good on paper. You see the names, it looks good. Now, the issues older. Some of the guys are older there. Some of the guys are coming off of injuries. Some of the guys are older and coming off of injuries. So those things are very worrisome. But just looking at the roster, it almost looks like the 49ers just have to kind of plug in a guy here and there. And, hey, this should be a team on paper looking at names that can potentially compete for a deep playoff run. But I say that, but that's definitely not the vibes I'm sensing. Or maybe I'm reading the room wrong, but and not that everyone feels like the sky is falling, but it definitely feels more like people are a little on the edge of their seat right now with the 49ers, and that this draft and whatever they do at pick 11 is very pivotal to the future of this organization.
I'm going to share this mock draft here with the folks out there that are watching, and I'll talk through it here and kind of putting some of these rumors together. Let me zoom in on this a little bit better here with the 49ers mock draft that I did. I can't even find. I got too many tabs open. I can't even find where it is right now. Did that help? That did not help that much. I'm going to just go ahead and save it and do it in a different way so we can all see it on the screen. So essentially, this is what I have going on with the San Francisco 49ers. I'm putting all the rumors together. Now, if the 49ers trade Brandon Aiyuk, I think one of the things that shocked everybody in this mock draft that I put together, Croc, is I put a wide receiver out there with the 49ers first pick, but it was after a trade down. So I had the 49ers trading down with Tampa at pick number 19. And yeah, this isn't, let me get off of this because this isn't going to look right. Let me put it on the screen a little different way here. I had the 49ers trading down to start the whole thing off. And I had him trading Brandon Aiyuk before the draft even starts, right? Before April 1st, Brandon Aiyuk, I had him going with the New England Patriots. The way we just talked it up, maybe it is Shedeur Sanders, and maybe the Patriots end up with Travis Hunter playing wide receiver at the 4th pick. So maybe he's a Cleveland Brown. But I think the ask for the 49ers would be somewhat similar. I put a 3rd round pick out there. It's probably the over-under. It's hard to see him going for more than a 3rd round pick right now coming off of the ACL. But clearly the Niners aren't trying to give him away, or else he might already be somewhere if indeed teams like the Patriots and the Browns and other teams are calling. Looking at the mock draft here, and I'm going to put it back up on the screen for those at home. I have the 49ers trading down to pick number 19 and taking Luther Burden. And it's a guy, Luther Burden, out of Missouri, wide receiver that Croc, you and I both like a lot. and you and I both agreed is a very Kyle Shanahan type of wide receiver. And I think he's worth a top 19 pick all day, even though it's looking like he's fallen a little bit. And I would have said a couple months ago, he wouldn't even have been there at pick 19, but he's starting to fall a little bit in the NFL draft. So that's kind of where I went with some of the 49ers picks here is players go into the spots where they are rumored to be going. And pick 19 is a place where at this point, Luther Burden probably should be available. And so Luther Burden at pick 19 to the San Francisco 49ers after a trade down. And again, I'm gonna put it up on the screen here in a second. I want to blow all the picks. But what are your thoughts about Luther Burden? And then I had the 49ers moving back up from 43, double dipping in round one, getting Walter Nolan, who's another player that you and I both like. I think the 49ers for sure. Biggest need right now is defensive tackle. So two prospects we both identified, great fits for the 49ers, both prospects we both like, and two prospects that for some reason are falling to the point where maybe the Niners don't have to take him at pick 11. Niners will need a wide receiver after trading Brandon Aiyuk. So coming out of day one, Croc, Thursday night, with Luther Burden at 19 and then going up at the end of round one and drafting defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, Walter Nolan. And what's funny is some folks try to tag you in this and tattle on me and say, Croc, come get your man. He's talking crazy about the 49ers draft. And my response was, I think you'd be surprised because Croc likes both those guys. If I'm not mistaken, what do you think about that? Like, this is a little, I don't know how accurate or how, I'm not trying to be super accurate here, but John Lynch talking about what he's doing. And in fact, I want to hold on one second before I get your thoughts. I want to sell a little bit more and then let you think about it, Croc, just with these first two picks. So Niners go down, collect some extra picks, then go back up after trading Brandon Aiyuk as well. So you get an extra pick for Brandon Aiyuk, which is a third rounder. And then you get extra picks from trading down, which gives you a lot of extra ammo. You go up from 43 end of round one. You end up with Luther Burden and Walter Nolan in the first round. And when I talk about these players, they're for some reason falling in a lot of expert mock drafts, insider mock drafts. There may be some off-field stuff or character stuff, not necessarily off-field because their tape is fine with these players. But when it comes to what the 49ers are going to do here, I think you identify what the fits are, and then you identify what kind of difference-making talent. And when John Lynch speaks about the plan that the 49ers have, it's got to be more than just, well, we have 11 picks, and we're going to make the picks at the spots. So I've got the Niners making moves, two massive trades before they even make one selection. I'm going to go through the rest of it as well next, Croc. But think about it. I'm going to get your thoughts on Luther Burden, Walter Nolan in round one before I talk about the rest of the mock draft and put some other rumors in there and plug some players in that the 49ers are apparently very interested later in the mock draft as well. Next. All right, Croc, I'm going to put it up on the screen for the folks in a second. But just for the first round, you go down, pick 19, you draft Luther Burden, you come back up, nice little package. You get up from 43 into the first round to get Walter Nolan, defensive tackle, wide receiver, defensive tackle after round one. What are your thoughts if that was to go down on Thursday night?
Love it. And I'm right there with you. I think a lot of people are going to get hung up on Luther Burden's stats from this previous season. And there was a big drop off. If you go back to his true sophomore season and you look up some of his numbers, 86 catches, over 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. That's a drastic difference from his 2024 season stats, 61 catches, 676 yards, and 3 yards per catch drop off from one year to the next, right? So I think a lot of people will kind of focus on that. But when you just watch the film, you just look at ability, like the ability that he had as a true sophomore. A guy that's only 21 years old. And I say only because 49ers, they've been kind of, they've been drafting a lot of older guys. But we put on the film and we love the ability of him, like what it looked like. It's like, oh, this is a Kyle Shanahan type of receiver. And he's a big guy. I say big. He's got weight. He's kind of really similar built to Brandon Aiyuk, 6 feet tall, so a little bit taller. And this is at the combine, 6 feet tall, 206 pounds. Aiyuk was a little bit over 5'11", 205 pounds. So Aiyuk was well put together as well, a little bit more wiry with these super long arms. But Luther Burden tested very well. He ran a 4.42 at the combine. That's extremely well. One thing that I feel like is getting a little overlooked is he had 0 drops. All right, so we're talking about somebody that has elite hands. And his play strength is really good. He's one of those guys that you could look to, hey, how do we get the ball in his hands? And he did a really good job of run after catch doing those things. But also, he's a pure receiver. He runs good routes. And this is a guy that most people had pegged as the wide receiver 1 heading into this season. Now, I like Ted McMillan. I liked him all the way last year. That was a little bit more of a personal like because I watched him at Arizona when I was watching one of the kids that I used to coach. But Luther Burden was a guy, everybody's wide receiver 1. He doesn't have great he doesn't have a great year because the quarterback situation was just terrible. And now everybody's like, oh, he's a late first round or he's a early second round guy. Like, no, this guy has day 1 ability. So if you're able to trade back to pick 19 or get younger at the receiver position, like John Lynch said they were trying to do, drafting a 21-year-old receiver that does everything that the 49ers like, that's something that I can really get behind.
I'm willing to bet it all that Kyle Shanahan is one of his draft crushes, Luther Burden. I mean, he fits to a T. He's a phenomenal athlete. He can go get the ball down the field. He's tough over the middle of the field. Like his scouting report, if you read it, he's faster Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Like that's what we're talking about. That like his physicality, the way he plays, I think he's got that mental wiring that you want in a wide receiver, his competitive nature. He can go track the ball and get the ball down the field. I know they never threw the ball past 10 yards, but that was an offensive problem. That was a quarterback problem. That was not a Luther Burden problem. Go put on his junior tape if you don't like what you saw his sophomore tape, if you don't like what you saw his junior year there. So I think people are really overthinking it, and I think he's going to go higher than what we're seeing. We're seeing him fall out of the first round. No shot. I mean, he's a better prospect, period, than Ricky Pearsall, who went 31. Like, if Ricky Pearsall,
I see he changed his number to number 1.
Yeah,
love it. I think it's going to look really good on him. Has a little swagger to him. That number 1 is going to look good on him.
And it's not saying Ricky Pearsall. Luther Burden's just a better prospect to me.
Right. And we felt that, right? Remember, I put out one mock draft typically every season right before the draft, and I mocked Ricky Pearsall to the 49ers. I just did it a round later than when the 49ers took him. And you never know where guys are going to go, but that was where
I find this interesting. Almost nobody had Golden ahead of Luther Burden before the combine, and Luther Burden threw down at the combine, but Golden ran a 4.29. All of a sudden, got Golden. He's the guy, number 1 wide receiver. Like, really? I didn't hear a lot of that before the combine, before he ran that 4.29. Golden's a nice prospect as well, and he's got speed. I think he doesn't have quite the play speed that his 4.29 does, but he can break off a route and does have top speed on top of it. Not the biggest guy, 190 pounds, 5'11", 190, something like that. But yeah, he's a fine prospect. But Burden is Kyle Shanahan's going to watch these guys and be like, that's my guy, Luther Burden, especially if you're talking about replacing Debo. I don't know how that XZ works out with Burden. And anyway, but Walter Nolan is the key to this because he's the gem of the first round, being a potential do-it-all powerhouse defensive tackle. There's some maturity stuff, apparently. Someone told me that he was telling recruits at Texas A&M to careful because they're probably not going to pay you their promised NIL money. And if that's what the problem is, I like him even more, to be honest with you. But I don't know what the whole story is. Teams have the whole dish on him, but the fact that he's not getting mocks in the top 15 tells me maybe there's something else going on there. I don't know. But, man, if you could pull those two talents in the first round, I think that would be absolutely phenomenal. I know they're both guys we liked on tape, Croc, for the 49ers. Sorry for covering up your face here, but I want to put the whole mock draft up here. And I just want to put some other rumors together for the 49ers. Now, you got to double up on defensive tackle. And so went tackle round 1, waited till round 4. You get the 295-pound tackle in Walter Nolan, and then you go Jamari Caldwell, who's really athletic, but 330 pounds. And so you kind of get the 1 tech / 3 tech, and you get both styles of defensive tackle in this draft. But in between is where there's a lot of rumors about the 49ers, and 2 guys that apparently the 49ers have been pretty heavy on. And I got 2 Oregon Ducks, and the 49ers brought everybody. They brought the whole contingent to Eugene, Oregon, to look at the Oregon Ducks. And a lot of people thought it was for Harmon, the defensive tackle. Jeffrey Bassa, the linebacker, really fits height, weight, speed, what the 49ers like, former safety at linebacker out of Oregon. So I got him going there in the 3rd round. Like I mentioned, Jamari Caldwell, who transferred from Houston. He was an Oregon Duck, had him in the 4th round. And then another guy, Oluwafemi Oladejo, who was a former off-ball linebacker who transitioned full-time to edge rusher for UCLA. His pass rush win rate wasn't all the way quite where you'd want it, which is why he's there, late third, early fourth type of a player. But Femi Oladejo has got some athleticism and apparently just off the charts, high character leader type of a guy that I could see being a gold helmet player for the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know about second round for him, but I got him going in round 3. Harold Fannin, another guy, Croc, in round 3 that is just a really nice fit for Kyle Shanahan, someone to have a lot of fun with as a move tight end in the offense, and who knows, potentially could replace either or both of Kyle Juszczyk and Juwan Jennings with his style of play, because he could do a lot for an offense and an offensive coordinator like Kyle Shanahan. So two really versatile offensive pieces, because Kyle's going to get his offensive guys. Jared Wilson, super athletic center as well. I actually traded up to get him because he was still on the board and was like, well, I can't let him slide any further. And so I wanted to double up with Wilson and Jamari Caldwell. Logan Brown, Dominic Pooney's old teammate, really tested well. He could be a tackle. He could move inside and play guard, a tackle out of Kansas, and then threw in a late round safety, Malachi Moore out of Alabama. Ismail Mon Jr., another linebacker out of Georgia. Again, fast, undersized, that same type of linebacker the 49ers have really hit on recently. Then Tommy Hill, who, I don't know, could even be a safety convert, but a cornerback that will hit you out of Nebraska. Probably a good special teams type of a player as well in round 7. That was my mock draft I put together, Croc. Feel free to tear it apart.
Oh, no need to tear it apart at all. And a lot that I like, going back to the first round, trading up to get Walter Nolan. That's a guy who, when we first put on the film, we watched 2 guys that were mocked to the 49ers. Walter Nolan was mocked to the 49ers in the second round. And immediately after watching the film, I said, if you flipped in this mock draft, that it was one of the, the big media guys that put it together. Or was it on the Beast? I want to say, was it that mock?
Brugler. Yeah. His original mock had Membo and Nolan, at the first 2 picks. Yeah.
And I was like, man, you might be able to flip these guys because I really like Nolan, even at pick 11. Now, that doesn't seem to be the consensus. And if you kind of go back a couple years, remember when the Jets drafted Jermaine Johnson? That was a guy where maybe social media was potentially higher on him than the NFL at that time, but the Jets were able to get him late in the first round. I think Walter Nolan, if you're able to get him at pick 24, I really love that. We've talked about the versatility of Harold Fannin Jr. Really love him and what he potentially could be at the next level, especially as a wide receiver 2 or somebody that works off of a guy like George Kittle, if you already have him. One of the names that sticks out here to me that you drafted really late there, round 7, Malachi Moore. And Malachi Moore out of Alabama, this is a safety that's been playing since he was a true freshman. And I don't know what the hell happened at Alabama, for him to kind of like fall this far down. If you would have asked me when he was a freshman, I'm like, oh, this is the next, first or high second round pick safety from Alabama. He's got to play in that nickel and do some of those things. He made some plays, but it kind of never just took off after his freshman year. So that's a very intriguing name. I'm always big on guys that come out of that program. But overall, what you did is addressing obviously needs that the 49ers have or adding depth to it. I think the 49ers do a terrific job really every year of being able to get production out of guys that we just either haven't heard of or aren't big names. So when you look at this list right here, it seems like a lot of guys that are ready to come in and, hey, guys that can compete for a spot and or step up if needed, if somebody goes down. And that's really what you're needing. But those first 2 guys, if you just told me, however you look at it, the 49ers walked away, really first 3 guys. If you're like, hey, after the first round, the 49ers have Luther Burden because they traded Brandon Aiyuk, so they got Luther Burden, and now you got Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, and those guys. They also have, Walter Nolan, and they got Harold Fannin. I'd be pretty damn happy about those first 3 picks.
That's kind of thing to be able to move around, and if you trade Aiyuk and move down in the first round, you got so much ammo to kind of go back and really control the draft and go get your guys at that point. I don't know if that's the strategy that John Lynch is talking about that the 49ers have, but I just couldn't sit back after hearing John Lynch talk about the plan that they have and just not put all these rumors together and just kind of see what something would look like if the 49ers got really aggressive and had a little fun in the draft and had multiple moves going on. So I wanted to put together a mock draft like that. I'm not going to submit this as the most accurate mock out there, right? Like that wasn't the point of this. That's what mock drafts are. And people forget, like that's what mock drafts are. Like the context is the most important thing of the mock draft. Why does it look the way it looks? And I wanted to explain what I was doing there with that one. and trying to put some things together. And I think there are a lot of interesting rumors surrounding the 49ers. A couple of quick notes here before we get out of here, Croc. Jeff says Jihad Campbell might be the safest pick in this draft, and we need another versatile linebacker, natural blitzer, led that Bama team in tackles for loss. One thing that I found out later after we did our scouting report on Jihad Campbell, Croc, was that he tore his labrum or something like that. So he's got some injury stuff going on. So that might slide him a little further down the list. He might be there for the 49ers at pick 43. And I know you would be a big fan of him at that point in the draft.
Yeah, I tore my labrum. That's not something I feel like I worry about.
Really, linebackers are tough. I mean, if all the stuff that Greenlaw played through, obviously he couldn't play through his Achilles tear, right? But and then you got Fred Warner, who's just like got a broken ankle, and like, hey, Fred, you're gonna probably have to shut it down and get that ankle taken care of, right? And he's like, no, not a big deal. I got a broken ankle and I'm playing on it, and that's it.
The torn labrum, I think I didn't even elect to do surgery. I kind of like let it heal on its own and kind of did my own personal rehab. And I'm back strong. I can hit 315 on bench press. And I don't know if it's like 100%, but if I had to play a game or anything like that, I'm good. I mean, the only thing I can tell that's different, it's just a little tight. If I try to like put my arm behind my back and kind of pull my arm up, I can feel a lot of tension on the labrum. So there's like certain movements there where you can kind of feel some of the tension. But if I had to play in a game, like I could play in a game. Now we're talking about after, a month or so of doing my own kind of little personal rehab, or 2 months, however long it was. But I think overall it never really, there was one time where it was like, I kind of tweaked it and felt a little something and had to get it checked out. I kind of rested for a little while, but that's not something that would deter me from drafting a player.
Real quick, Croc, what do you think about this?
That's not a knee. It's not like, oh man, this guy has a degenerative knee or he has something going on. Like the labrum, it's not that. Like you're fine with the labrum.
It's one of those things that wait till the offseason, fix it, and you'll be fine. Orlando, what do you think about this one? It says, if you trade Aiyuk, you should be able to work with Kittle, Pearsall, Cowing, Demarcus Robinson, and another vet, Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett, somebody like that off the street. What are your thoughts there? Well, one of the things I saw is people talking about wide receivers as big need after the Niners traded Deebo Samuel. And my thoughts were similar to Orlando's then, thinking, look, you drafted a first-round guy. He should be able to replace Deebo Samuel as your number 2 in the offense, right? Or else he shouldn't have been that pick. You missed the pick if he's not able to do that. But that's with Brandon Aiyuk. If you start trading Brandon Aiyuk too, I would disagree. At that point, I think wide receiver becomes a really big need. And you still need a guy for the future that you believe can be a difference-making type of player. And I for sure think Kyle Shanahan would view it in that sort of way. And that was kind of part of it with me with Kyle Shanahan. Like, he's going to put on the tape for someone like Luther Burden. And he's going to put on the tape for Travion Henderson. And he's going to put on the tape for some of these guys that I think will become Shanahan draft crushes and be like, John, I really like this guy. Like, well, how does it make sense? Right. And so he'd be like, well, look, we could trade Brandon Aiyuk. Jed wants to save $110 million anyway. How about this? And we'll trade back a little bit. And so-and-so team's been calling. What if we move back a little bit? If Burden's still there, what do you think? You want to do that? We'll make that trade. And like, I can picture Shanahan putting on the tape. He's got the clicker in his hand. He's watching Burden. He's like, man, I wish I wouldn't draft Pearsall last year because this is my guy. I like him even more. Like, no doubt in my mind, Kyle Shanahan's going to watch Luther Burden and say, hell yes. Right. And so that's kind of where I went with the Luther Burden pick. But you trade Aiyuk, wide receiver is a pretty big need. I'm not rolling out there with Pearsall and Cowing and Demarcus Robinson.
Definitely not. Yeah, you trade Aiyuk, you got to go rookie. One thing I will say about Ricky Pearsall that Kyle may like, and you start to kind of get some of these nuggets, but just the way he approaches the game of football as a professional. And we can look at all these prospects and talk about the talent that they possess, but where they are between the ears is one of the biggest indicators of how they'll be as a professional. And I was just talking to a recruit when I was at Sac State the other day, and I said, dude, the higher up levels you get, especially when you get to the NFL, it's 90% mental, 10% physical. So whether you're a big guy or you're this fastest guy and all that, I'm not saying it's irrelevant. There's like an athletic threshold that you'd like to be at, but everybody is that. So what's going to separate you from being a guy that has a 10 to 12 year career, or the guy that flames out after a few years because he just doesn't get it? It's really all mental. I think for Ricky Pearsall, he's a guy that will be a long he'll have a long career at the NFL level because of how he approaches the game. And that's something that could separate a guy that maybe he's not as talented physically of a prospect, but there's other things that makes him very intriguing.
I totally agree, Croc. And Pearsall obviously had a rough offseason, and he was injured before getting shot in the stinking chest, right before the season started. And then was just dropped in. It was like, all right, figure it out. Sink or swim time. Once he got in there, and there were some really bright spots and some other times where he went 3 games and the ball hardly went his way. But when it comes to Pearsall, to put it the simplest, he's a gym rat. He's going to work hard. He's wired in a way that they even said early on in like OTAs, like, yep, we love the way he practices like a pro already. We love that about him. You don't have to talk to him about that kind of thing, which is huge. And he can get open and catch the ball. He might not be a dynamic deep threat, might not be huge after the catch. He might have some, play strength issues, but it's not a toughness issue. Like, he'll go over the middle. He just can get knocked off his route and bumped off, but he can break off a route and he can catch the ball, pure hands, right? So if you could get open and catch the football, it's a pretty big deal. A big wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Let us know what you think. Any questions, any topics you want us to get into. We're going to break down a lot more prospects. I think we got a bunch of defensive tackles coming up next because, that is the 49ers' biggest need as of today. And it doesn't look like they're going to be signing any starters before the draft, Croc. At this point, if anything, they're going to lose more starters than they had before the NFL draft. So I don't know if that's going to become not a need anytime soon. Talking defensive tackles next. Of course, you can subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Croc and I back tomorrow, right here, Locked On 49ers.